For more on this, I'm joined on the line live from Washington DC by retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor. He was a senior figure within the US Army and oversaw the planning and the lead up to the Second Gulf War. Thanks very much for your time. Can I ask, first of all, this is a fluid situation, but there's a tweet from Iran's foreign minister saying Iran took and concluded proportionate measures. Can we take this that if Donald Trump doesn't now retaliate, this escalation actually ends here?
Yes. Iran has 2,000 missiles with which it can strike with great precision all over the region. They fired 15 at 3 separate target areas. They hit places where, fortunately, there were no American service men or women. As far as I know, there have been no casualties. And I think this was a simple statement that we're retaliating for what you did when you killed a member of our government, and we are not interested in going to war with you. That's flat out what happened.
And so you'd assume their strike was deliberately calibrated not to actually have casualties, kill US troops, because they would know that would escalate things? Is there enough knowledge to know that they would have known what they were hitting here in terms of where troops are?
Oh, absolutely. They know everything in the region of importance to us. They know exactly where we are in Iraq. So there was no mystery as to where to strike. They deliberately struck in a way that was designed to demonstrate to us we have the capacity to strike any target in the region that we deem appropriate. We have chosen to use only 15 missiles. We could have used 500. And we did it in a way that satisfies our national honor in response to your assassination of a member of our government. It's very simple. Now the president has to look at this carefully, and we'll find out whether or not Mr. Trump is the president we voted for. Remember, he said he was going to end these endless wars. He was going to pull us out. 69% of American veterans who fought in Iraq, like me, have all concluded that it was a waste of time and that we should get out. 64% of the American people are opposed to any war with Iran and favor immediate withdrawal. So I think the intelligent thing for the president to do at this point is to disengage and get out of Iraq. If we escalate, can we destroy Iran? Of course we can. And then we open the floodgates to Sunni Islamism and Mr. Erdogan in Turkey. And he's far more dangerous. And the Sunni Islamists are the reason that we entered the region to begin with. We'll end up with something 100 times worse than ISIS.
And that's the test, as you mentioned, Donald Trump has set for himself, essentially. No doubt as well, Colonel, that he'll be getting that advice. He'll be told, if you want to retaliate further, well, then this just keeps ratcheting up. For now, Donald Trump achieves his aim for not really much blowback.
Well, look, I think that he's surrounded by terrible people, to be blunt with you. He's picked some of the worst advisors I think he could have asked for. He's got people as Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State who are card-carrying members of the war lobby in Washington, D.C. They're members of the domestic and foreign policy lobbies that have been working hard for 20 years to bring on a war with Iran. They have given him bad advice, and I'm sure that when he asked the question, if we move ahead and kill Mr. Soleimani or General Soleimani, what happens? And they said, well, Iran's weak, it's falling apart, it can't possibly respond. And I think that's probably what he was told. So what he needs to do is, in addition to de-escalate and get our troops out of Iraq and Syria, where they have no useful mission whatsoever, is then he needs to fire these people and replace them with better people that will give intelligent advice.
What's your prediction? I know it's a dangerous game, but we've had Donald Trump initially set to speak to the media tonight, US time, about now, Australian time, and that didn't happen in the end. Does that show perhaps he's reconsidering? He might be going beyond that narrow set of advisors you were talking about?
I think he is listening to people. And remember that last summer he was ambushed by some of the same people by events in the Gulf. The CENTCOM commander, General McKenzie, had plotted a flight path for the Global Hawk through the Persian Gulf on the edge of the Iranian air defense zone, knowing full well that this slow-flying surveillance aircraft could easily be acquired, targeted, and shot down. I think the hope was that this would precipitate a war with Iran at that point. And the president wisely said, no, I'm not going to take the bait, and I'm not going to do this. After all, it was an unmanned aircraft, and he walked away from it. So hopefully when he meets with the same actors who will come in with 52 targets that they can hit all within 6 hours, it will cause enormous damage, that he says, no, that's not what we came to do, and it's over. We're not going any further. If he does that, he'll be reelected. On the other hand, if he proceeds down the road to war, he will destroy his presidency. And every Democrat that's running against him will pick up the talking point that Trump has launched yet another war that the American people don't support.
And to be clear, what he will be getting between now and whenever he gives a news conference, we're assuming, perhaps it will be via Twitter, is this menu of options that will include a whole list of areas to strike, and you believe urging to do so, and presumably balancing that up against what he would know, presumably, that what this would do to escalate the situation.
Well, remember that Iran is not Iraq. Iran is an ancient civilization. It's an ancient country. This is a real nation of people. And while the majority of Iranians are not terribly happy with their government, they are still very proud people. They will strike back. I think it is a certainty that the Russians will come to their aid and assistance, and I'm sure the Chinese will finance it. And the Chinese will supply and assist the Iranians in any way that they possibly can. The Japanese, the Koreans are horrified at the prospect because all of these Northeast Asian countries are dependent on the oil and want to do business with Iran. The Europeans will be horrified because they see Sunni Islamism as the enemy, not Shiite Iran. Remember, Soleimani, for whatever it's worth, was instrumental in mobilizing thousands and thousands of Iranian and Arab troops inside these militias to fight ISIS. And in fact, the 5 militia targets that we struck, people involved in those target areas that were still fighting ISIS, digging them out in southern Syria. This is stupid, but this is a product of 2 decades of systematic effort to bring on a war with Iran. It's not in our interest.
Retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor, really appreciate your time today. Fascinating insights. Thank you.
Sure, my best to you. Bye-bye.
And we're going to just take you live now to Iran. This is where hundreds have gathered in Kerman for the burial of Qasem Soleimani. This is 5 days after he was killed in a US airstrike in Baghdad. Iraq's Prime Minister said Soleimani was travelling to meet him to discuss a Saudi peace proposal when he was assassinated. The US, of course, is claiming he was planning an attack on US troops in the region. You can see there many of the Iranian people. And the passion, of course, plenty of people talking as well about the fact that not all of them by far like the regime. Many of them strongly encouraged to get out there. Nonetheless, a massive demonstration.